You know the story, right? We've all been there. You go to the store, you see this absolutely gorgeous, lush Boston Fern, and you think, this is the one. You bring it home, give it a special spot, and then the mystery begins. The tips start turning brown, the fronds get all crunchy, and your beautiful green dream turns into a crispy, tragic mess. Well, today we're grabbing our detective kits. Welcome to CSI Plant Clinic, where we're going to crack this case wide open.
See, here's the thing. Your fern isn't just giving up on you. It's sending out signals. It's trying to talk to you. Every single brown tip, every wilting frond, it's a clue. So in this explainer, we're going to teach you how to become a plant detective. We're going to learn how to read those clues and finally figure out what on earth your Boston Fern has been trying to tell you all this time.
So where does any good investigation begin? At the scene of the crime. And for our poor fern, the crime scene is the huge, glaring difference between its natural home and, well, your living room. Just look at this. In the wild, it's basically living in a 5-star tropical spa. We're talking up to 80% humidity. But in our homes, thanks to all our heating and air conditioning, it's like we've dropped it in the middle of a desert, often with less than 30% humidity. Honestly, this one fact right here, it's the source of almost every single problem we're about to investigate.
Okay, let's start with our very first piece of evidence. Section 1, the frondly deception. We're diving into the mystery of that crispy frond. It's the most obvious clue that something is seriously wrong.
And there it is, Exhibit A, the brown, crispy tip. This is what sends everyone into a panic. But here's the catch. This is where most investigations go completely cold, because this one little clue can point to a bunch of different culprits. The biggest mistake you can make is just jumping to the conclusion that it needs more water. We've got to dig a whole lot deeper than that.
So, that brings us to Section 2, Anatomy of a Brown Tip. It's time to bring in our usual suspects for questioning. We're going to learn how to tell them apart by looking way more closely at the evidence.
And this leads us to the million-dollar question, the one that stumps pretty much everybody. Are these brown tips because of too much sun or because of not enough water? They look the same, the cause is totally different, so how in the world are you supposed to know?
And here it is, the big reveal. The symptoms look identical because at the leaf level, they are identical. It's just dehydration. But where that dehydration starts is completely different. Think of high light like a blowtorch on the leaves. Water is literally evaporating faster than the roots can possibly keep up. Underwatering, on the other hand, just means the well is dry. The roots have absolutely nothing to send up in the first place. So here's the key takeaway. You can't solve this case by only looking at the leaves.
This is where a really good detective shines, because you have to use all the clues you're given. This chart here shows us how to use our second big clue, the soil. So look, if the fronds are crispy and the soil is bone dry and pulling away from the pot, your prime suspect is underwatering. Case closed. But what if the fronds are crispy and the soil is perfectly moist? Aha! The real culprit is almost certainly low humidity. And if you see that weird white crusty stuff on top of the soil, that points us to a third suspect, salt buildup from too much fertilizer.
So far, everything we've looked at has been on the surface. To really, truly crack this thing, we need to go deeper. Welcome to Section 3, the root of the problem. Yep, we're getting a warrant to go below the soil line and check out the hidden evidence.
And this right here is exactly what we're looking for. Healthy roots, they're firm, kind of whitish, and they smell good, like fresh earth. But unhealthy roots, well, they tell a very specific story. If you pull it out and the roots are black, all wrinkled and brittle, that's death by drought. But if they're dark brown, totally mushy, and they smell awful, oh, that is a much, much more sinister problem. And that problem is called root rot. And listen, this isn't just a case of oops, too much water. No, this is a full-blown fungal disease. When the soil stays soggy all the time, it runs out of oxygen, and that creates the perfect breeding ground for this nasty pathogen, Pythium. It just attacks the roots, turns them into mush, and completely cuts off the plant's lifeline. It can't eat, it can't drink, it's just starving. Now, the other hidden killer is something called osmotic stress. This is the wild science behind fertilizer burn. When you over-fertilize, the salt concentration in the soil actually gets higher than the concentration inside the plant's roots. And because of this natural process called osmosis, the high salt in the soil literally starts pulling water out of the roots. Isn't that crazy? The plant is being chemically dehydrated by the very stuff you thought was helping it.
Okay, we've identified our culprits. Now it's time to spring into action. Let's move to Section 4,
emergency room protocols. We're going to walk through the critical steps you need to take to save your fern and finally close this case.
All right, if the diagnosis is root rot, you have to perform surgery. Step 1, get that plant out of its pot. Step 2, grab some clean, sterile scissors. And you have to be ruthless here. Cut away every single piece of dark, mushy, rotted root. Don't be shy. And finally, step 3, repot it in a brand new, clean pot with fresh, sterile soil to make sure it doesn't get reinfected.
Now, if the culprit is salt buildup, the procedure is leaching. First, just physically scrape off any of that white crust you can see on the surface. Then, and this is the most important part, you're going to flush the soil. You need to slowly pour a ton of distilled water or rainwater through the pot. The goal is to literally wash all those extra salts out. And then, please make sure it drains out completely. Okay, for this next procedure, you're going to have to trust me because it sounds absolutely brutal. But just check out this quote from our research. Boston ferns are cited as exceptionally tough and tolerant of aggressive mechanical division. The takeaway? These plants can take way more than you think. And that leads us to our final and most dramatic emergency procedure. For a fern that is just hopelessly root-bound, I mean a dense, tangled mess of roots, the best fix is aggressive division. You take the plant out of the pot, you get a sharp, sterile knife, and you literally slice that root ball right in half, or even into quarters. Then you just repot those new sections. You haven't just saved the plant, you've made more plants. Phew, okay, the emergency is over, the patient is stable. Now we can focus on long-term care. Section 5, the prevention plan. This is all about setting up a fern-friendly habitat so you never, ever have to play detective again. So if you remember only one single thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this number right here, 50 to 80%. That's it. That is the magic number. That is the humidity your Boston fern is dreaming of. Our sources all agree this is the #1 most important factor in preventing those crispy fronds from ever showing up. So how do you actually hit that number inside your house? Well, you've got 4 really good options. An electric humidifier gives you the most consistent control, hands down. A super easy way is to put the pot on a tray filled with pebbles and water. As the water evaporates, it raises the humidity right around the plant. You can also group it with its plant friends to create a little humid jungle. And yeah, misting is only a temporary fix, but hey, every little bit helps. And finally, it really helps to get in sync with your fern's yearly rhythm. This timeline makes it super simple. Spring is when you should repot if it needs it. Spring and summer are growing seasons, so that's when you fertilize, but always at half strength. As fall rolls around, you can start to back off on the watering. And this is critical. In the winter, stop fertilizing completely. This will prevent that toxic salt from building up while the plant is resting. So there you have it. We've lined up the suspects, we've analyzed all the evidence, and we've put a solid prevention plan in place. Case closed. But you didn't just learn how to keep a fern alive. You learned a whole new skill, a method of observation, of diagnosis. So the final question I have for you is this. Now that you can think like a plant detective, what other mysteries around your house are just waiting for you to solve?